You ever watch a grandmaster play, see them stare at this incredibly complicated chess position, and just wonder, how on earth do they know what to do? It seriously looks like magic, right? Like some kind of intuition you're either born with or you're not. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on all of that. We're going to completely demystify their thought process.
I mean, you know that feeling. You're sitting there deep in a game, you look down at all the pieces, and it just feels like pure chaos. It's like a random jumble of threats and possibilities and traps. You know there's a good move hiding in there somewhere, but just figuring out where to even start looking can feel totally overwhelming. If that sounds at all familiar, then you are in the right place.
Because here is the big secret. For a grandmaster, that chaotic board isn't a mess at all. And that incredible insight they have, it's not some magic genius they were born with. Nope, it's a system. It's a clear, repeatable checklist that the pros use, a lot of the time without even consciously thinking about it, to break down any position in seconds. It's the tool they use to read the board. And today, we're going to break that system down, step by step.
All right, so let's get into it. The best way to think about this system is to see it as a map. For most of us, a chessboard can feel like uncharted territory. But for a grandmaster, it's a structured map, one that's full of signposts, clear landmarks, and obvious pathways to victory. And you know what the best part is? Anyone can learn to read this map. This framework is your guide.
So, here's the plan for this explainer. We're going to start by going from chaos to clarity. Then, we'll cover the first 3 crucial steps, which I like to call board triage. After that, we'll dive into the deep strategy of steps 4 and 5. From there, we'll connect all of that to finding the perfect move. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into your brand new thought process.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, from chaos to clarity. Right now, we're about to lay out the entire 7-step framework. This is the complete roadmap that's going to take you from feeling confused and overwhelmed to feeling clear, confident, and totally in control of your game.
And here it is, the 7-step framework. I want you to just notice the logical flow here. It starts with what we call triage. First, we evaluate the material, who's up, who's down. Then we check king safety, which is probably the single most important factor in any position. After that, we scan for tactics, looking for any quick shots. Once we know the board is secure, we move into strategy. We analyze the pawn structure to figure out our long-term plans, and then we improve our worst piece to boost our army's overall power. Finally, we get to execution. We find a few candidate moves based on everything we've learned, and then we calculate and blunder check to make sure our choice is the right one. That's it. That's the whole process.
Okay, let's really dig into Section 2, board triage. I want you to think of these first 3 steps like an emergency room checklist for the chessboard. These are the absolute, non-negotiable checks you have to make before you even think about doing anything else. If you can get these right, you will immediately stop making so many simple mistakes.
All right, step 1, material. Who's ahead? Are you up a piece, down a piece, or is it basically equal? But look, it's not just about counting points. A knight that's stuck on the side of the board is nowhere near as good as a bishop slicing right through the center. So yeah, count the points, but then immediately ask yourself whose army is actually better. Next up, step 2, king safety. This is absolutely critical. You could be up a whole rook, but if your king is about to get checkmated, none of that material means anything. Zilch. The player with the safer king almost always has the advantage because they get to attack freely while their opponent is stuck defending. And finally, step 3, scan for tactics. Before you start dreaming up some brilliant 20-move plan, you have to check for immediate tactics. Just use the CCT rule. Checks, captures, and threats. Are there any for you? And just as important, are there any for your opponent? This quick scan will stop you from blundering, and a lot of the time, it'll show you a winning move right then and there. Okay, so the immediate dangers are handled. Now we get to zoom out. Welcome to Section 3, Deep Strategy. This is where we stop just putting out fires and actually start to understand the long-term landscape of the game, the very shape of the battle that's about to unfold.
Step 4 is all about analyzing the pawn structure. Think of the pawn structure as the skeleton of the entire position. It's more or less permanent and it dictates everything else. It tells you which squares are strong, which files are open for your rooks to use, and where all the long-term weaknesses are hiding. If you can understand the pawn structure, you'll know exactly what kind of plan you should be making.
So when you're looking at the pawn structure, you're basically hunting for 2 things, strengths and weaknesses. On the weakness side, you're going to look out for stuff like double pawns or isolated pawns. These things are like sitting ducks that become long-term targets. But on the strength side, you're searching for assets, like a passed pawn. A pass pawn is one that has a clear path to the other side of the board, and it acts like a ticking time bomb, forcing your opponent to deal with it while you build up your attacks somewhere else. Understanding this balance of power tells you who really has the long-term edge.
I absolutely love step 5 because it's just so simple, but so incredibly powerful. In any position, some of your pieces are heroes, doing amazing things, and some of them are, well, just kind of sitting there, not doing much. Your job is to find your laziest piece, the one that has the least influence, and just give it a job. Make a plan to get it into the game. Just activating your single worst piece can dramatically improve your entire position.
Okay, we've analyzed everything, we know the material situation, we know whose king is safer, we've scanned for tactics, and we have a sense of the long-term strategy. Now, in Section 4, we turn all of that understanding into one single, concrete move. This is where our analysis becomes action.
And this brings us right to Step 6, find candidate moves. You see, the point of all this analysis isn't to find the perfect move right away. It's to filter out all the noise. In any given position, something like 95% of all legal moves are just irrelevant. Your real goal is to identify just 2 or 3 logical candidate moves that address the key things you found. If the enemy king is weak, your candidates are attacking moves. If your worst piece is a lazy bishop, your candidates are moves that reposition it. This simple step turns overwhelming chaos into a manageable choice. And once you have those candidates, you go to the final step, Step 7, calculate and blunder check. This is where you look just a couple of moves ahead for each candidate to make sure your choice doesn't fall into a simple trap. It's the final safety check before you play your move.
And this is a brilliant illustration of how this system creates absolute masterpieces. In this legendary game against Topalov, Garry Kasparov's entire strategy came from Step 2, king safety. He looked at the board and realized his own king was perfectly safe while his opponent's was super exposed. And that one single insight gave him the confidence to start sacrificing material, to unleash all his pieces, and to weave this stunning attacking web that people still study to this day. It's a direct result of following this framework.
Or how about this classic from way back in 1889? The second world champion, Emanuel Lasker, saw the single biggest weakness on the board, his opponent's king. That's Step 2, again. So what did he do? He scanned for forcing moves, checks, captures, and threats, which is Step 3. He then unleashed the famous double bishop sacrifice, giving up a ton of material just to rip open the king's defenses and deliver a beautiful checkmate. It is a perfect, brutal combination of Steps 2 and 3.
So, from Kasparov to Lasker, we see this system in action. We've taken the board from a chaotic mystery and turned it into a map that you can actually read. Now, in our final section, let's put it all together and really solidify your new thought process, cementing that path from feeling overwhelmed to feeling in complete control.
So let's just summarize this whole 7-step flow into 3 clear phases. First, you have triage. That's where you cover steps 1, 2, and 3, checking material, king safety, and all the forcing moves. With the immediate situation under control, you move into phase 2, strategy. Here you deal with steps 4 and 5, analyzing the pawn structure for long-term plans and improving your worst piece. And finally, you have phase 3, execution. This covers our last steps, 6 and 7, where you find your candidate moves, calculate the outcomes, and do one last blunder check before you play. Triage, strategy, execution. That is the Grandmaster's map in a nutshell.
Now, look, the first few times you try this, it's probably going to feel a little slow, maybe even a bit clunky, and that's totally normal. You should expect that. But with practice, this conscious checklist, it starts to become second nature. It evolves into a fast, intuitive scan that gives you this deep insight into any position you face. It becomes your Grandmaster intuition. So, the most important thing to take away from all of this is that the board is no longer a random mess. It's a map. It's full of clues and signposts and clear paths that are just waiting for you to find them. Now that you have the guide, the only question left is, what journey are you going to take?